Good evening. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Wilmette Zoning Board of Appeals. Ms. Roberts, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Boyer.
Here.
Ms. Norick.
Here.
Mr. Rabke.
Here.
Mr. Schneider.
Here.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair is here as well. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you new to our proceedings, the purpose of this board is to hear evidence on applications for variances and from our zoning ordinance and on applications for special use. Based upon the evidence we hear this evening, we will make a recommendation to the Village Board of Trustees as to whether the applications that come before us should be granted or denied. We will vote to recommend granting or denying each application for variation based on whether the application meets the standards of review set forth in Section 5.4.f of our Village Ordinance. Applications for special use will be considered based upon whether the standards of review set forth in Section 5.3.e of our Village Ordinance are met. The Village Board of Trustees will consider the recommendations we make this evening at their next regularly scheduled meeting on February 26th. Our recommendations to the board are advisory only. The Village Board has the final say on all applications and will make its own determination as to whether to grant or deny them. The Village Board is not legally bound by our recommendations. There's one small exception to this rule. If this board makes a negative recommendation with respect to an application, in order for the Village Board of Trustees to approve that application, a supermajority of 5 Village Board members must vote to approve it, rather than a simple majority of 4. There's one other small peculiarity to our proceedings of which you should be aware. This board does not operate by majority vote. We operate instead by a tyranny of 4. In other words, no matter how many board members are present on a given evening, in order to get a positive recommendation from this board, an application must receive 4 affirmative votes. Ordinarily, this board consists of 7 members. Tonight, however, due to an absence, there are only 6 members present. Well, there are now. Ms. Roberts, as Assistant Director of Community Development, sits with us tonight in an advisory capacity only and is not a voting member of the board. Please be aware, therefore, that a vote of 3-3 will technically go into the record as a negative recommendation with the legal effect I have previously described. In recognition of this unusual feature of our procedure, when we do not have all board members present on a given evening, we give the applicants who are scheduled to come before us that night the option of requesting a continuance to the next available date on our schedule. The next available date for any applicant who would like to request a continuance this evening is March 20th. There is no penalty for asking for a continuance. No such request will be held against you when your case is eventually heard. If you wish to ask for a continuance, however, you must do so at the beginning of your presentation before making any substantive arguments as to the merits of your case. Please also be aware that if you request a continuance, there is no guarantee as to how many board members will be present on the evening to which your case is continued. The cases we shall hear this evening will be heard in the order set forth on the pre-printed agenda located on the table near the door where you first came in, although I'm going to make one minor alteration to that. When your case is called, please proceed to the podium, state your name and address, and tell us exactly why your application meets the standards of review that are applicable to it. Each member of this board is a longtime resident of the village and has visited your property during the past week. In addition, we have received from village staff these green booklets containing all written information that you have submitted in support of your application, as well as any other correspondence that the village has received. Accordingly, it is not necessary that you repeat what you have already stated in writing. Please just hit the high points with particular attention to why you believe your application meets the standards of review. After the applicant has had a chance to speak, we will open the podium to others who wish to speak either for or against the application. Everyone will be permitted to have their say, though we would ask that you keep your comments as short and to the point as possible. After we have heard all oral presentations, I will close the evidence, and the members of the board will discuss what they have heard and take a vote. Once the evidence is closed, no further testimony on an application may be offered. The only people entitled to speak during that part of the proceeding will be the members of the board. This meeting is a legal proceeding, and all testimony tonight must be given under oath. If you are here and planning to testify tonight, I would ask that you raise your right hand at this time and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth in the testimony that you are about to give? If so, please say, I do. Thank you all. Ms. Roberts, will you please call the first case?
Which is which one?
Oh, I apologize. I was going to alter the... All right, so we're going to go 1120 Michigan Avenue, then we're going to jump to 33 Catalpa, then we'll go to 1304 Lake, and finish with 444 Skokie.
Okay. Our first case is 2019 C3 1120 Michigan Avenue. This is a request for a 2-foot side yard patio setback variation and a 1-foot side yard retaining wall setback variation to permit the installation of a patio more than 2 feet above grade and a retaining wall on the south lot line.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Kettlecamp, and Kettlecamp Landscape Architecture, located at 1315 Sherman Place in Evanston. Lisa, oh, there, it's right there in front of me. Let's do this. Wanted to thank Lisa and staff for preparing the summary for you in terms of the staff comments. There's one correction that I do want to make in here. It refers to, there's one section here where it refers to the west end of the terrace, and actually it is the east end of the terrace. So I think that's just flipped in that section. It's under proposal. Let me read through this really quickly. It'll come out as I walk through the drawing really quickly. The part of the staff summary that I want to draw attention to is that she and staff call out the fact that the swimming pool itself conforms to the zoning requirements. What we're essentially looking at are two features here as regards the pool. There's the yellow highlighted area that you see, which is the requested area of additional paving or of additional decking. And that is requested because in that particular area, the hill drops off, and we're building that area up. We're building that area up to the elevation of the neighbor's property. And you'll see that on the drawing, let's pull it back this way, highlighted on the plan is the neighbor's retaining wall, which in blue. So we've got the neighbor's retaining wall highlighted in blue. We've got our proposed retaining wall highlighted in pink. And that retaining wall then supports this area of additionally requested paving that we're asking for a variance for this evening. Again, the reason that a variance is requested in that area that's highlighted yellow is because the hill begins to fall off at that point, and then in putting in the retaining wall, we're raising the grade more than 2 feet. And in Wilmette, when you raise the grade more than 2 feet, this additional decking requirement begins to kick in. What I want to point out is that the pink wall ties back into the neighbor's retaining wall, whereas the current zoning code requires that there be a gap between retaining walls. The neighbor's retaining wall actually comes up to the property line, and normally what would be required in that situation would be that there would be a 1-foot gap between the two retaining walls. We're not structurally tying into the neighbor's retaining wall, we're just abutting it, and the reason that we're doing that is just to create a cleaner connection between those two retaining walls, and to eliminate what we believe would be a bit of a hardship with the one retaining wall sort of hanging out in space, and there being this lack of a connection between the two retaining walls, permitting, water and runoff to flow down between those two retaining walls. And we're concerned about a maintenance issue as well. It just gives us a cleaner connection. In addition, the area highlighted in yellow is around the pool. The decking that you see, let's go back here. The decking that you see in this area here is all permitted. It's only when we get down to that yellow area that the decking is not allowed, because the grade does start to fall off and we are building that area up. But a simple solution would be just to eliminate that yellow area of paving and just make that planting. But what that does is it kicks in another aspect of the pool code, which is that basically around a pool, for safety reasons, you have to have 4 feet of paving beyond the setback line. So it's the hardship that we're attempting to demonstrate in that particular location is that it gives the owner the ability to fully police that particular edge of the pool, as opposed to that area being planting, which is not allowed. I know that what we have to do is basically approve standards or go through the approval for the variation and meet those particular standards. In this particular case, the standards that we want to point out on, this is an atypical lot. There's 20 feet of grade change from the top here where the deck is down to the bottom of the project, where we hit the lower portions of the project down there. So it is an atypical Wilmette lot in terms of the amount of grade change. Historically, grade changes in this neighborhood have necessitated the construction of retaining walls to make and to eliminate the concern for erosion around the sides of the house when you drop off that much, and that's why the blue wall was built on the neighbor's property. We just want to make that connection as far as our retaining wall a bit better with theirs, and we'd like to gain that additional policeable area that's in that area where we're filling. So in terms of the physical conditions, shape, or surroundings of the property that propose a practical difficulty or particular hardship, it does have to do with the lot and the fact that it does drop off that 20 feet across it. The plight of the property owner was not created by the owner and is due to unique circumstances. We do believe that the grade change is a unique circumstance, as well as that desire to meet the neighbor's existing retaining wall, which went in before there was this 1 foot side yard setback. The difficulty or hardship is peculiar to the property in question. It's not generally shared by other properties classified in the same zoning district and are used for the same purposes. This includes the need to accommodate desirable existing site landscape or unique conditions. It's an interesting street. Again, the standards that get applied to one side of Michigan Avenue are to flat lots, and then this side is applied to these lots that clearly drop off across the street. The difficulty or hardship resulting from the application of the zoning ordinance would prevent the homeowner from making a reasonable use of the property. Again, they do want to be able to police that yellow area more effectively in terms of being able to get up there if they needed to pull somebody out of the pool. And then in addition, with the pink connection, that particular hardship is, again, we just want a cleaner connection, or not a connection, but a cleaner approach to the neighbor's wall. Again, we're not structurally tying in, and then we want to eliminate that gap that would occur between the two walls there, allowing for that runoff that would occur between the two of them. And I also want to point out that from a grading standpoint, we're handling all of the drainage between the two pieces of property, the neighbor here and our property here. All the drainage is being handled on our property and back to a drain here that will connect into the greater site drainage system as it's currently proposed. Let's keep going here. I just want to make sure that we've met all the criteria, and I know that we have to meet all of them. The proposed variation will not impair adequately supply of light or air to adjacent property or otherwise injure other property or its use. We have reviewed this project with the surrounding neighbors. They've written a letter of support. Essentially what we're doing is bringing our grade up to their grade, and so that both of our properties are at the same elevation, and then we're controlling our water between the two properties. So we're not shedding any water onto the neighbor's property or altering any sort of a particular light condition that would result on the site. We're not altering the character of the neighborhood, as this is all behind the house. You guys have all visited the site, and I appreciate you doing that. With respect to building materials, unforeseen advances in technology, again, this particular requirement doesn't necessarily apply in this particular situation. So I hope I've done an adequate job explaining that or giving you just sort of my commentary about it. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to hear them. We did work on one additional project down the street where two neighbors did work together in a similar situation. This was at 1020 Michigan and 1006 Michigan. And in that particular situation, they did something similar with the two retaining walls, as opposed to holding the two retaining walls a foot off of each other and creating this no man's land in between. They did join those up, and it turned out rather successfully down the street.
Go ahead. I have a question, just to understand this plan. So the pool deck is at elevation 609, correct?
That's correct, 609.2, and that's the grade of the neighbors. That's the.
If you take that purple retaining wall, and it extends to that gray line. You see that? What is that?
Oh, so the gray line that was originally there. This little gray line that you see there was where where the wall was proposed to go when the city notified us that we needed to terminate that wall 1 foot back from the property line. We made a modification and put the pink line in, which then just turns the retaining wall back toward the neighbor's retaining wall and makes that approach directly at the property line. So as opposed to holding that pink line back from the blue line by a foot, we're taking it all the way up
But
to
he's talking about what's going across the middle of the pool.
You see
Right.
the elevation, 602.5?
Hold on just a second here. Sorry about that. Whoops.
Well, that's the edge of the pool.
No, it's not.
That's the edge of the pool, but it's 609.
So can you explain, you need to explain the gray line that runs across the edge of the pool, right? Is that goes from side to side of the pool?
So this one here.
Yes, that.
Okay, that's the it's a zero edge pool. Sorry about that. I didn't indicate that. So it's a pool that is a zero edge pool where the water drops over. So essentially the coping elevation of the pool is 609.2, which is the grade that's at the neighbor's property. And what happens then is there's a drop off and it falls down into a lower pool, which is 602.5.
I got it.
So there's like a 6.5 foot drop there. Sorry about that. I didn't understand what you were
So
asking.
directly opposite the yellow area?
Yes.
Going to the north?
Yes,
So that is 7 or 6.5 feet below the edge of the pool.
that's correct.
So that's to code?
That's not in the, yes,
Because you have to have the 4 feet off the side of the pool.
correct, but there'll be
Even though there's a 6.5 foot drop?
there's a safety ledge that's located in, that'll be part of the pool application, and in Wilmette, if there's a safety ledge that's incorporated into that area, then that is allowed. So
Why didn't you do that on this side?
the
On the south side of the pool? Why not make the pool shorter so that you don't have to deal with the change in elevation?
If the deck is required for safety on one side, why isn't it on the other side?
Because
What the
he's saying
hardship
there's a
was to provide
safety ledge here, right?
Right. But there's still a 4-foot wide access along the north side and around
But
the
that
lower part.
access could be down lower and not require the variance, just like it is on the other side.
And again, what we're looking at this point is just this aspect of the retaining wall and that additional paving. So,
Right, but I mean, essentially, if you make the pool shorter,
correct.
then you aren't, running into this decking issue where you have to have the setback for the patio coming that close to the side yard, and possibly changes the retaining wall is the retaining wall. We get why you want to have it
Right.
there. I understand. I shouldn't speak for the board.
Understood.
But, if you don't have that deck on the other side of the pool, why do you have it on this side of the pool?
I think it.
Because, you say safety, well, someone can get fished out. Well, what if they're on the other side of the pool? They can't get fished out at 6.5 feet up.
Again, we've got that. There's this safety ledge that's in there, so that basically there's 2 feet of coping, and then there's 2 feet of safety ledge below the level of the water. Is kind of how I would describe that. So
couldn't you do that on this side? On the yellow side?
We don't really have a provision to waive the walk. And so I think we would prefer to have as much walk as possible that's accessible to the pool. Does that make sense?
Then
Yeah, it makes sense.
we won't walk on the other side as well.
But he's saying there's a little walk along this edge here.
Right.
there's a,
Right, well, and then-
I mean, just so that you
Well,
fully.
they're drawn symmetrically, so I'm not seeing any difference.
So there's
If it's on the inside, you can do the same thing on the other side.
So it's on the inside of the pool.
It is on the
Yeah, it's a
inside of the
ledge
pool,
that somebody
yes.
can stand
And that
across
is,
the edge
yeah, that's correct. It's
and
under the
get
water. It's actually
in the
under the water,
water.
and that is allowed in Wilmette.
And then that allows you not to have the decking.
That's correct.
But you prefer to have the decking.
I think we would like them to have the 4-foot decking on the other side to the extent that they're able to provide it, yes.
And so,
Also provided on that.
yeah, I mean, that's where I'm going. So as I look at the north side of the pool, where in about the center of the pool, you've got this 609.28.
In this area, that's the north edge of the pool right there.
Yeah, and so those are stairs leading down, I take it?
That's correct. Those are stairs that go down that go down to that lower area of the house. The whole landscape across the back of the house. Oops, let me bend this over. The whole landscape across the back of the house drops down 20 feet from the top to the bottom, or
Right.
About 20 feet from the top to the bottom.
So then my question, to maximize the amount of decking around the side, instead, couldn't the stairs lead to the north where you've got a landing and a little gate?
Yep.
And you could fill that area in with more decking, right?
But then we still have the 7 feet that we've got to get down with additional stairs. So I mean,
But they can lead to the north, away from the pool. Or
they can't because
looks like that's patio right there, isn't it?
this is all doors across here. So we're doing this project in conjunction with an architectural addition to the house. So there's a house modification going on. We're pursuing this just as a landscape a landscape variance. We submitted the plans as they were drawn, and then these points the issues were pointed out by staff during our review period.
So if this is going to be new modification of the house, they can change those doors, right? And put stairs that way, or move the stairs, so that they start at the point where you've got the gate and run. You see what I'm saying?
I just know that because of the functionality of how the architecture is working at that point, that's not possible. So, So again, that's not. Yeah, that's not possible.
I don't understand how that's.
So the hardship is based upon an architectural design that they're undertaking right now that we're not seeing, that's limiting the pool.
And so one could argue that the hardship is being created by the homeowner.
That's
But
what I just heard.
but the variance that we're seeking, there's no variance being sought on the north side of the pool. It's the highlighted elements where staff has indicated that we require a variance. So it's not that north side of the pool that's triggering the situation. It's these issues that are occurring on the south side of the pool that are triggering the situation.
All right. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
There is reference to a letter of support from the neighbor about 17 wall.
Yeah, that's correct.
You might have not flipped all the way over.
The neighbors at
Never seen one all the way on the back.
the neighbors at 1112 are familiar with the situation, and oops, page through. Did you want me to read that?
No.
Okay. Basically, in their letter, they basically say that
They're in support of it.
that the neighbors came over, reviewed the project with them, showed them what the issues were, and that they understand what's going on.
Well, it also says that it would make sense to simply eliminate the paving in this area, but doing so would violate code. Do they understand that this could be addressed on
Correct, and then so
the
that
other side, as we're talking about?
So you see what the possibility would be there would be that that this area here, I'll draw it as fluff, that this area would become a planting area. Again, all of this paving on this side is completely fine as far as code goes. It's just this area where if we made it planting, that would satisfy this issue of having decking in this area where the grade is being changed. But we have to have paving in order to meet pool code.
Because you haven't provided it on the other side.
It has to be provided on all sides except on the side where there's the zero edge, where there's a zero edge pool.
All right. Any other questions for our applicant? No? Okay, I want to make sure that you've shared everything with us that you want to share before I ask if there's anybody else in the audience who wants to comment on it.
Absolutely, and I want to make sure that you've asked all the questions that you want to ask so that you understand what's going on. So,
We have.
thanks.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak either for or against the case? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to close the case and ask if there's a member of the board who'd like to make a motion. Mr. Robke?
With regard to case
Mr. Kettlecamp, you
2019
can have a seat.
Z03, move to recommend granting a request for 2-foot side yard patio setback variation, 1-foot side yard retaining wall setback variation to permit the installation of a patio more than 2 foot above grade and a retaining wall on the south lot line of 1120 Michigan Avenue in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second? Mr. Schneider, second. Mr. Robke, your motion.
To me, I'm not seeing the hardship. There's other ways to address this, particularly if the pool is being designed, the pool location. We don't know what else is studied. This is related. We can't provide this on the other side because of a current architectural design that's going on. The retaining wall makes sense to avoid that no man's land, and I can understand that so long as drainage is properly handled. But I'm just not seeing the hardship that drives the variation related to the paving and the deck indicated in yellow, and I don't think I can support this.
Mr. Schneider?
I think clearly the retaining wall makes a lot of sense, and to abut it with the neighbor's retaining wall makes a lot of sense. I think what we're talking about here at the end is a 7-foot by what looks like a 7-foot or roughly 50 square feet of additional decking, which is de minimis in the scheme of the whole project. And I don't think we should force them to tortuously to remove that, to eliminate that variation by reconfiguring the whole project. I think it is just too much of a burden on the homeowner to do that, and the neighbor to the south has approved it, has no objection, and we're talking about 50 square feet of decking, and I have no problem approving this.
All right, excellent. Any other comments?
Just want to make sure I'm looking at this right. So the grade where this decking is going in is going to match the grade of I think it's Danny Ephraim's house, 1112, right?
That's our understanding, yeah, at about 609 feet.
So the current level of the subject property is below the neighbor currently. And we're going to be bringing it up to
Right.
match the grade.
So as you look at the middle of the swimming pool, you can see, 608.98, 608.37, and it goes down to 602 at the end of the pool. The reason that, and then as you look into the deck, it's 608 something, but it's covered over. Once the area raised is 2 feet above the grade, right? That's when this comes into play, which is why only that little bit of the yellow area is affected and not anything more to the west.
But the yellow area now matches the neighbor's grade.
That's our understanding, yeah.
Okay. So the way I'm looking at this, since this is an atypical lot, to propose the presenter's words, this is a unique circumstance, the grade of the land. So I think this is, overall minimal request to satisfy a practical difficulty of this.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Boyer and Mr. Schneider that I think it's a minimal request. Obviously, the proposed retaining wall makes a lot of sense, and I mean, if the village wants to have as much coverage here with the deck as possible, I think it's a de minimis request, and I can support it.
I think I just want to respond to some of the comments. I agree it's a de minimis request, but I'm troubled that the letter in support from the neighbor says it makes sense to us that they could simply eliminate the paving, but doing so would eliminate the decking entirely, and a violation of village code. And yet it doesn't exist on the other side, and we really haven't seen anything that says why they couldn't satisfy this requirement on the other side. If it's so critical to have on this side, it should really be provided on both sides if it's really a safety issue. And given that they are in the midst of another renovation that we don't know if it's creating this situation, I'm concerned that the letter of support is a cautious letter of support that seems to imply that it would make sense if they didn't have it.
And
But this seems to be a reaction to something going on that they're creating. So
I don't know. I understand your concerns of the proposal. I look at the letter a little bit differently, so I'm taking it as he has a clear understanding of what the zoning codes are, and he's looking at this with understanding construction, and so I'm taking that as he understands what's happening here, instead of one of those form letters that we normally get from neighbors that fill everything in and then fill in the neighbor's name and they sign at the bottom. So I'm taking it a little bit differently, that it's not that it's a concern. It's actually, I'm thinking that he has a firm understanding what the zoning codes are, and he's making a support with that
I
understanding.
guess I read if it's a safety hardship on the one side, it's
Yeah,
the same on the other.
From Lisa's comments, I think that the village, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so correct me if I'm wrong here, the village seems to say that, as much paving in the 4-foot width as we can get around the pool, we'd like to see. And understanding that the lot slopes off, if you look at the line, the contour lines, as they go across, they curve as you come around to the other side of the pool. And so the drop-off is more extreme on that side of the pool than it is on the north side of the pool than it is on the south side of the pool. So therefore, having the stairs come down through there, and the village has said, okay, we're okay with this as long as you provide this safety step in the pool or whatever it is. So as long as the village is saying they're okay with it, and they're saying, well, let's just, as much of the deck as we can have, that's, I mean, am I hitting it about right there? Yes.
Well said.
All right. So, I mean, that makes me lean to kind of say, if the village is okay with this, this is what they're recommending, then I guess.
It's not what they're recommending from a zoning perspective. It's what they're recommending from a pool design perspective.
It's safety.
And I would love to understand why that can't be accommodated on the other side. And if that reason, if I understood that reason, other than, there's some windows there, then I would certainly be able to support it,
Yeah.
providing that on the other side is a safety consideration.
All right. Why don't we take a vote on this? Unless there's more comments to be added. Ms. Norick?
No, I can support the proposal. Thank you. Mr. Robke?
No.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Boyer?
Yes.
Mr. Colling?
Yes.
Ms. Norick? Yes. Chairman Duffy?
Chair votes yes as well. So that's going to go as a positive recommendation to the village board. Meetings on the 25th, I think I said, 26th. You'll be in this same room at 7 o'clock. I suggest you're here just in case they have any questions for you. If you could, Mr. Kettlecamp, if you can come up and please just sign one of these letters for me and take the other one with you.
Move to recommend granting a request for a 2-foot side yard setback variation. No, not tonight. Move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the zoning board of appeals for case number 2019-C-03.
Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Boyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Yep. Have a good night.
Our next case is 2019 Z6 233 Catalpa Place. This is a request for a 1-foot side yard detached garage setback variation and a variation to permit the retention of a nonconforming detached garage upon demolition of the principal structure.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Mike Swain. I'm the builder of the property at 233 Catalpa Place. And do you need my address? I'm a Wilmette resident. I've been here before. It's nice to be here, not in trouble. We've already demolished the existing single-family home, anticipating receiving the building permit for the new structure in the next couple of days. I'm building this for a client, and we looked at the existing garage and said we're going to build a garage in the exact same place, and structurally the garage is very sound. It's kind of like we're anticipating re-siding it, re-roofing it, and putting a new overhead door on it, but it would be more or less it would be the exact same size in the same spot, 1 foot over. So that's why we're here today.
So hold on a second. Are you building a new garage or are you retaining the old
We'd
garage?
like to retain the existing garage. It's about 20, well, I know the permits say it was built in, I think, 96.
Yeah, it says 95 on our sheet.
95, 96. The slab is in great shape. Structurally, it's in great shape. Needs new siding and new roof. And we thought, why tear something down to build the exact same thing in the same spot?
A foot over. Okay.
So,
So you are saying that you are not reconstructing this garage. You're just going to put new siding on it, a new roof, and a new overhead door.
right.
Because we've had someone come before us before and say that they're doing basically the same thing, and they've rebuilt the structure, and it was a non-conforming structure that you recall this. Yes.
I know what you're talking
Yes.
about.
So, Lisa, in something like this, if it's more than 50% new, then it has to be treated as new. That doesn't fall under that by replacing almost everything except.
I think it does because it's new construction for the site, which is why it's.
Right, so, yeah, so the code requires that if you tear down the house, a non-conforming accessory structure has to be removed or made conforming.
Okay.
In this case, the siding and the roof, like roof shingling would be maintenance and not structural repairs. If they were doing structural stuff to the garage, that would trigger. Not,
Got it.
okay.
All right. We pretty much understand what you're doing. Any questions for our applicant?
I have a question for Lisa. So I saw that this was constructed and approved in 1995 by the village?
That is the permit record we have, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for our applicant? No other questions. Everybody understands what's going on. We're just keeping a garage. Anything else you want to add?
No.
No. Anybody in the audience that wants to speak either for or against this case? No. Thank you very much. Do I have someone that wants to make a motion here? Thank you.
Move to recommend granting request for a 1-foot side yard detached garage setback variation and a variation to permit the retention of a non-conforming detached garage upon demolition of the principal structure at 233 Catalpa Place in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second? Mr. Boyer, second. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Colling.
I mean, a 1-foot variance is a de minimis variance. They're keeping the structure. They're maintaining it by putting everything new on it, and so I can support this.
Mr. Boyer.
Right. I mean, the strict application of the code actually would cause a hardship in this. And think of the carbon footprint we're saving by having this remain. So this is a very eco-friendly vote we're going to take.
Any other comments?
Any other? No.
Don't think we're in the business of telling somebody to tear down a perfectly good
Garage.
structure,
Yep. All right. I agree.
typically.
Pretty easy. As long as you're going to do what you say you're going to do. Yes?
I have an honest face, don't I?
You've been here asking for forgiveness before. All right, let's take a vote.
Mr. Colling.
Yes.
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
Ms. Norick.
Yes.
Mr. Robke.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. It's going to go as a positive recommendation. There's going to be a letter for you to sign February 26th. You'll be on the consent agenda.
Move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2019-Z06.
Thank you, Ms. Norris. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. All right. I hope you make the basketball game.
Our next case is 2019-Z5, 1304 Lake Avenue. This is a request for an 8-foot side yard mechanical equipment setback variation to permit the installation of an exhaust fan.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Ben Wosley. I'm the fire chief for the village of Wilmette. Back in 2014, the village or the fire department applied for and received a FEMA federal grant in the amount of $132,000 to install a Plymouth vent.
That pulls out farther if you'd like. There you go.
A Plymouth vent exhaust fan. These Plymouth vents are used to bring exhaust from the fire vehicles at startup and while backing in to the outside, which obviously makes it safer for our firefighters. When it was originally installed in 2014, the blower motor was installed inside the fire station per the design of the salesperson. I wasn't the fire chief at the time. I didn't have anything to do with the project. But over the past 4 years, we've been dealing with decibel levels of in excess of 75 dB at the floor. We're currently installing a new station alerting system, which will allow us to have better speakers inside the apparatus bay. So we'd like to be able to hear that as well. The firefighters have been complaining for the past several years about this. So we want to put it directly to the outside and facing the railroad tracks. Our setback to the railroad easement is only 6 feet. We do have 2 air conditioning units, a full-size station generator, as well as some other exhaust pipes back there as well. In the application, I think we submitted the spot for the fan makes the most sense due to its proximity to where it is right now, as well as how many feet it is to the closest neighbor. If we put it anywhere else in the fire station, it would be considerably more expensive and facing our other neighbors. So the closest one we had to a residence was 283 feet using our GIS software.
Do we have any questions? Nope. All right, I'm going to tell Jim Dominic that you're changing one of his installations here.
That's right now.
All right, everybody's good? All right, is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak either for or against this case? Seeing no one, I'm going to ask if there's a member who'd like to make a motion here. Mr. Boyer, thank you very much.
In regards to case 2019-Z05, I move and recommend granting a request for an 8-foot side yard mechanical equipment setback variation to permit the installation of exhaust fan at 1304 Lake Avenue in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second? Second. All right. Mr. Boyer, your motion?
Unique property, commercial type property, in a commercial location on the tracks, on the west of that it abuts busy lake or busy Green Bay, busy Lake Street, and then commercial properties across the street. So I don't see the new fan location interfering with neighborhood properties anyway. So I think it makes sense. The best place for this fan, I think it meets all the standards of review.
What do you think, Mr. Robke?
Completely agree. I think to force them to move into a more expensive solution would be a hardship for the taxpayers.
Any other comments? No other comments? Yeah, this was pretty much no-brainer for me as well. It's really not impacting anybody. So why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
Mr. Robke.
Yes.
Mr. Colling.
Yes.
Ms. Norick.
Yes.
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. So that's going to go as a positive recommendation of Village Board. Meeting's on the 26th in this room, 7 o'clock. Chief, if I could have you sign one of these papers and take the other one with you, I'd greatly appreciate it. And have someone...
Move to authorize chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2019-Z05.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Ms. Nork, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well. Thank you.
Our next case is 2019-Z4, 444 Skokie Boulevard. This is a request for a 2,712.18 square foot total floor area variation to permit the construction of a one-story addition on the legal non-conforming structure.
Hello, welcome. Good evening. What?
Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Eric Piquel. I'm the sales and marketing manager for Orrin Piquel Building Group. We recently moved to Wilmette, moved our showroom office and our corporate offices to 444 Skokie Boulevard. I'm here representing my parents, Orrin and Tina Piquel. They're out of town today, but essentially what we are coming here for is a zoning variance to improve upon the building that we purchased, that we've made our home, and this is both the Architectural Review Board will review the architectural merit of the project that we're proposing, but this is to improve the functionality and the quality of the building for not only us, but our tenants as well. So, John's going to give you some more of the specifics, but...
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm John Forehand. I'm an architect with the Piquel Group here. I think that I know you guys, hopefully you've been by the site and you know it. The biggest issue we have here is that based on the site, the size of the site, we can have 24,000 square feet of space, essentially. And the way that the building is set up with the parking below, the owners are, this is basically our hardship, is that we only can have about 18,000 square feet of actual leasable space because the parking is counted toward that leasable space. So that's kind of our big hardship from that standpoint. What we're trying to do here is, and I've got, I think, we're trying to add basically enclose 3 parking spaces right there in the front, right off of Skokie Boulevard. And when you look at the variance request, it's currently a non-conforming building. I believe we're right around 27,000 square feet, is therefore asking for, I think it's about 11% variance, although we really are only asking for about 500 square feet for this enclosure. The enclosure is meant to be both storage and enclosed parking for the building. The building has a very small footprint at the entrance, and there's really no room for storage. And the way that these buildings are working nowadays, you've got FedEx and Amazon coming to these buildings. There's literally no place to put anything. So really that's what prompted this move here. We think in terms of meeting the standards, it's certainly not hurting anything in the neighborhood. We're definitely asking beyond the approved square footage, but again, our hardship being that we feel as though we're penalized due to the fact that the parking is a unique condition underneath the building.
So just so I understand what you're doing, you're going to enclose an area that currently is not under roof.
Correct. There's a small portion of it is under roof, but only about 2 feet of it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so in the total dimensions of that space that you're enclosing, I know I saw.
Let's see. It comes out to be at 545 square feet.
Right. And you're not encroaching anything, right? There's no, we don't have any setback issues. We don't have any.
No setback issues. There is a little, an easement that runs underneath, it's a utility easement that goes from the Skokie Boulevard side. But we'll be.
You're away from it, yeah.
Yeah, we will have to deal with ComEd to make sure that we get that when we come in with building plans. We would need to resolve that with ComEd.
And cars currently park in those spots
They
right
do.
now.
Yes.
So it's used on a daily basis as parking.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
That's where I park.
Right.
Any other questions?
Building was constructed in '78. Was it before the zoning codes? I'm assuming it was conforming at the time, or there was no issue during construction. Do we have any information on that?
My understanding is that I'm not sure what the history of floor area for commercial structures was, but up until the current code, open-sided parking under a building was not counted. So that is new with our 2014 ordinance.
Okay.
Is that right? So, but
Yeah.
what is the logic of that?
Similar to single-family residential, where we count space under roof. Basically, the appearance of the bulk, you've got 2 or 3 stories of building above it with only 1 story that's sort of open. I think you can make the argument that it's still perceived as a full, full enclosed building, even though
But the building is conforming in height.
it is, I believe, conforming to height. Yeah, I think so.
32 feet.
Yeah, we had originally thought we were going to add a stair tower, that we were asking for some additional height, and I think we've backed off on that. I will mention that we're planning on doing, we came in for landscape through the ARC, that we've been approved to do that work, and we're going to repave the lot, and we've changed the lighting underneath the parking because it was rather dismal. Yeah, it's gotten better. And we are looking at doing essentially a whole facade change. So we're working to get the building a little bit friendlier to the neighborhood.
I'm a little confused because you said the hardship is because of the limited leasable space because you have covered parking, and your solution to that hardship is to provide 2 more parking spaces that are covered.
Right, enclosed spaces, but half of that, or a good portion of that, is the storage as well. So,
but why do you need to enclose the parking spaces?
The way, and this, maybe Eric can speak to this, in that we're doing this to essentially have what we call executive parking spaces. It's raising the leasability of some of these spaces. Currently, the building is probably 60%, 70% leased.
Well, you're not going to get more. He's parking there now, and he's got to come to work anyway. His name's
Right.
Yeah, right. I'm not executive.
right.
So
hang in there, you will be.
Someday, maybe. Essentially, this is giving us an opportunity to showcase an executive parking spaces for tenants in the building, if desired. The lobby space that we currently have is very small. It's essentially a pass-through lobby with an elevator and a stairwell. When there are packages and large packages delivered, they do get set in the lobby, and it actually creates a choking point and a fire hazard. This gives us the opportunity to have a drop-off location that is enclosed where large packages can go. Some of those are, because we are in the building now, we have a cabinet company, we do have to have larger packages delivered to the office occasionally. We do have other tenants that have large packages delivered as well. So this doesn't give us any more leasable space necessarily, but it does provide the building with or provides us with the opportunity to market the building with an additional benefit for particular individuals. So if down the line somebody wanted one of those covered spots included into their lease, we can have that part of the negotiation
What was
process.
the typical occupancy of the building before you bought it, do you know?
So before we bought it, the spaces that we currently occupy were vacant. So I think it was at about 50%. We've only got 2 spaces that are unoccupied, and we're currently trying to fill those.
Okay. But was that a historical norm? It was about 50, 60%?
They had been, the spaces that we overtook was actually occupied by a company that went out of business. Do you remember when that graphics company went out?
It's been a couple of years.
It's been vacant for quite a while.
Right.
So
it was never 100%. It wasn't like
about
90%.
Oh, sorry.
It wasn't like a 90, 95% occupancy.
Before we bought it?
Right.
No. The building was at about 50% when we bought it.
Right.
Because there's about 20% now, and we moved into about a third of the building, and then we retained all the other tenants.
Great.
We're actually pretty close on the way to having a full occupancy, but we do have leases that are 3 to 5 years, and then we've got some leases that are 15. Right. So there is the opportunity for some leases to
roll, right?
Move on. Yeah. And then the building is also set up for that executive parking spot to become a useful tool, because they're smaller units in certain parts of the building where that could be something that somebody would look for.
Sure. All right.
So how would that storage area work for like Amazon packages and stuff like that? I understand the need for a package room. Most new buildings would have it, but it's not accessible from the lobby. It's accessible from underneath, and sort of tied in with the executive parking. I would think executive parking would lose its panache if everybody was going in there to get their Amazon delivery every day.
And that's something that we've considered, and actually that if that storage room we did ever want to convert that back to the third parking spot, if we ever got to a point where we needed that third parking spot back, that structure can be modified to
It's
allow
really
for
not
a
a storage room, it's a garage with a storage area and 2 cars.
Essentially, yeah.
The entry to the lobby, there's an entry from the outside, from the Skokie side, and also from the underside of the parking, so it would be adjacent to the door to the storage area.
I'm struggling here because I was excited to see you guys move in there, and I figured they got to do something with the building. It's just not the image for designers and builders.
Right.
So I'm excited you're doing something. I want to support it. I'm just struggling because the hardship, I'm just, executive parking, I have a hard time saying that's a hardship, and that sort of goes into an economic criteria, which is not supposed to be a basis for it. So give me something.
Well, I think the real hardship of the building is the fact that when the building was built, the parking wasn't considered in the overall square footage that was considered for the what could be built.
I could buy that if you were adding usable square footage, but you're adding more parking.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that you're losing leasable square footage, you're not adding, or if you were enclosing a package room or something, is this also required to create the entry in the front? I'm trying to lead you to
So
give me
this
something.
will allow us to, because part of what we're going to be doing here is the front facade of the building, and this will also allow us to ground that building a little bit better. And we are doing we're working on a new cladding for the exterior facade. So this will actually help tie in that cladding material that we want to use on the building to make the building a little bit more.
It will anchor the building and enhance the streetscape.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Another thing thank you. Another thing to mention is we looked at placing the storage underneath the building, and what we were finding is in order to do that, we're losing more parking spaces by doing that, because if you've been down there, it's very tight. The parking's very tight. So by the time you build walls, in order to gain the square footage that we have.
It would be a safety issue. You'd lose your lines of sight.
Right, exactly. And
essentially, we would lose 6 spots and to gain 3 covered spots, and one of them would still want to be storage. So we would actually end up netting, or we would lose 4 spots where currently, by doing the storage, we're losing 1. However, our building, one of the nice things about it is that we have a surplus of parking spots for the usable tenant space that we have in the building currently. So we still will be perfectly conforming as far as how much parking we need in order, if we do have 100% occupancy. But this gives us the opportunity to anchor the building and make it look a little, give it a little bit more curb appeal.
She's going to ask you to speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. To anchor the building, give it more curb appeal, which I know is more of an architectural review board issue, but this also gives us the opportunity to alleviate, and one of the main reasons that we do want to do this, aside from executive parking, is having the the internal storage space down on the first floor, because that is one of the main issues that we have currently, is the fact that we don't want to clutter up the lobby.
All right. Any other questions for our applicant? Nope. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak either for or against the case? No. Anything else you want to add? All right. I'm going to ask if there's a member of the board who'd like to make a motion. Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Second.
No, you're going to make the motion.
First,
Do you not want to make the motion? Mr. Boyer would make the motion.
Sorry.
I'll make the motion. I'm not afraid to make the motion.
I got it.
You guys can have a seat while we work through this.
Move to recommend granting a request for a 2,712 square foot total floor area variation to construct a one-story addition on a legal non-conforming structure at 444 Skokie Boulevard in accordance with the plan submitted.
Do I have a second now?
Second.
Mr. Boyer, second. Mr. Schneider, your motion.
This is kind of intriguing. I understand why the code counts the space underneath the building as space that counts against the permitted area. And I'm kind of looking at it and saying, if they had built a two-story building and had taken the 9,000 square feet that are currently used underneath the building for parking and paved an adjacent area of 9,000 square feet, it would have increased the drainage issue, stormwater issue. So it would have been environmentally detrimental to this kind of solution. That aside, so I think and that is what causes the variation request. That they are adding to the enclosing some space below the two occupiable floors above. So I think this makes sense. It is not a big deal, and I have no problem with approving this.
Mr. Boyer.
So the existing space that we're talking about is being used for parking right now.
Two parking spaces.
Right. So the new area is going to be used as parking. Of course, some small space for storage, but it's now parking. It's going to be parking. We're just covering it. And the reason why we're here is because it was built before the zoning code change, and they're being caught in this with having parking underneath the building, so it's being added to their total square footage. So I think the strict application of the code is actually the hardship here. And so I think this makes sense. It's a rather small request. It's not going to affect anybody, and it faces more commercial and open space. And I think they're going to incorporate the new architectural design in a way that it's going to be seamless. So I think it makes sense, and I can support it.
All right. Any other comments?
I'll just say I'm generally against increases in FAR.
Yeah.
And I think it is a unique building, but the reason they put parking underneath buildings is because it's perceived as an amenity, and therefore they pay for it. If they wanted to build a two-story building, it'd be a much larger piece of land, and wouldn't happen here. But as a part of a facade renovation, and the fact that it is small, I can get over my concerns about adding to FAR and precedent, because I think taking the building all the way down to the ground, at least on this side, as your elevations show it, makes it a more traditional building and less of something you expect out in some suburban sprawl area with a bunch of office buildings. And I think that is a benefit to the village that will counter my concern over this small FAR request.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I too think it's de minimis, and putting my old plan commission hat on, or any of my other expertises that I think I have, I'm sure this is going to, be, it'll be an improvement to not see that sea of parking by just enclosing those two, that little bit of area. So I am supportive.
Yeah. Mr. Colling, any comments?
I'm fine.
To me, this was not a big deal. And the reason for it was because the building, the way it was constructed, it already has its bulk feature, and this really wasn't changing the bulk of the building to me at all. And the FAR argument, I mean, I totally get it. They're getting penalized because of the design of the building before this new code. So I, too, feel that I could support this. So why don't we take a vote?
Mr. Schneider.
Yes.
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
Mr. Colling.
Yes.
Ms. Norick.
Yes.
Mr. Rabke.
Yes.
Chairman Duffy.
Chair votes yes as well. So this is going to go as a positive recommendation of the Village Board. The Village Board meeting on the 26th this month in this room at 7 o'clock. I suggest you come just in case there's any questions. I doubt it, but if I could have one of you guys, please come up and sign one letter. You guys can take the other letter with you. And do I have someone to make a recommendation?
Move to authorize the chairman to prepare the report and recommendation for the Zoning Board of Appeals for case number 2019-Z04.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Colling. All in favor?
Aye.
You can just.
All right, microphone's open for public comment. The only public comment that I think I'm going to make right now is I'm going to thank Mr. Rodke for his service to the board for the years that he's been on here. He's been a valuable voice. He doesn't always agree with everybody, and that's a great thing for us to have on the board. So thank you very much for your time. And we hope that when your life changes that you maybe come back and finish out the rest of your 17 years of term.
Get my kid in college.
Right. So, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will now adjourn the meeting.